He asked to borrow my passport and I handed it to him like I was handing him a coffee receipt. I said okay because I wanted to be the kind of girlfriend who trusted. I said okay because he smiled and said it was just for a week. I said okay because I wanted to believe him. I should have felt the first crack the moment he asked. He never asked for anything big. He had asked for my favorite necklace once and then never returned it. He asked to borrow my jacket last winter and never gave it back. This felt different. He said he needed it for a work form. He said HR needed a scan. He promised to drop it off Saturday. He texted me the word promise twice. I felt like a gullible idiot, but I told myself trust was how relationships worked. Jess, my friend, said, "Hold on." She told me to take a picture of the passport and the photo page before I handed it over. So I did. I sent the picture to Jess and to my brother Mike. I told them what he said. They both told me to be careful in different tones. Mike used one word that tightened something in my chest. Follow him if you have to. He left that morning with my passport in his bag. He kissed me at the door and said he'd be back for dinner. He did not seem nervous. He waved like someone going to a normal appointment. I sat on the couch with my phone because I couldn't sleep. I stared at the message where he had typed, I swear, like it was both combative and pleading. I drove to the airport. It sounds crazy when I say it out loud. It sounded crazy in my head the whole drive. But the only thing worse than being lied to would be to wake up months from now and realize I had played the fool. If he had already set something in motion, I wanted to see it. If he was lying, I wanted to see the lie. I parked 2 lots over and watched the departures through the windows. I told myself I would leave if I didn't see anything. I lied to myself within the hour and told myself I would at least watch him from a distance. My hands were shaking so hard I called Jess and then hung up after a couple of breaths. I watched people stream by with suitcases and families and couples pretending not to look at each other. The airport is designed to make people anonymous, and I remembered every time he told me he loved me in an anonymous way text. Quick kiss. As if we were playing an easy game. He wasn't at the ticket counters. I saw him at the coffee stand. He was laughing at something the woman with him said. They walked together like they'd been doing it forever. I realized I didn't know what they looked like together because all my images of him were framed with the two of us. Seeing him with someone else felt like watching a picture being torn in half. I walked toward them like the earth tilted. I didn't run. I didn't yell. For a second I thought maybe it wasn't what I thought. Maybe she was a colleague. Maybe she was his cousin. Maybe he had a really good reason to hide a passport in his bag. Maybe I had misread everything and would have to apologize for following him and being low and suspicious. He handed something to her. He reached into his bag and passed her a folded sheet. I couldn't see what it was at first. Then she handed him something back, smaller and glossier. She slid it into her jacket. He bent his head toward her like he was taking a secret. He kissed her. The world compressed into the sound of the kiss. The coffee steam. The fluorescent airport hum. Every single thing I had trusted in him crumpled. I felt my knees go soft. I tested myself for the urge to laugh, to scream, to run. Instead, I took out my phone and filmed them because I needed proof of what my brain was trying to deny. I stood there recording while he kissed her like my entire life was a private thing he could fold up and hide in his pocket. I kept it steady. My hands were cold, but the phone didn't shake. I called Mike and put the phone on speaker for him while I recorded. He told me not to do anything stupid. He told me to stay where I was and let him come. He told me to record. I walked up to them. Up close, their faces were sharper than I wanted. The woman I later learned was Anna was small and had the kind of laugh that made people around her lean in. She smiled at me like she had the right to be there. He looked surprised, then annoyed, then guilty in the way men look when caught in the beginning of their own selfishness. I said I was his girlfriend. I told them I had given him my passport. I said it like a fact that would amend the situation. He told me I was crazy and that I'd followed him. He said the word harassing like it would save him. Anna asked what was wrong, like she was about to call someone. I didn't even think. I stepped between them and reached into Anna's jacket and pulled my passport out. Every single person in the terminal saw that motion. Heads turned, phones lifted, people filmed, security agents appeared like they had antennas for drama. When I pulled my passport out, the photo was mine. The name was mine, the passport was folded. He said I had no right to touch her. He said she could have lost it and he was helping. He was already a performer. He started to speak loud and sad and gave his version in practiced sentences. No one looked at me like I was the one out of place anymore. I was the woman holding a passport with her photo on it. Security asked for IDs. I gave mine. I showed the text where he'd asked to borrow it. I handed over the picture I'd taken for Jess. The recording on my phone kept replaying like a cassette clicking. For one glittering second, I thought I'd won. They took his bag aside. The security guard asked him where he got the passport. He sputtered. He couldn't make the story stick. The couple tried to act like I had invaded them. A sympathetic older woman whispered that he seemed like a sweet boy. I smiled without meaning to because victory felt like a hot thing in my chest. Then everything reversed so fast my brain couldn't follow. Mike called me and told me to breathe. Jess told me not to escalate. Anna reached into her pocket and handed the security guard a boarding pass and a printout. She said she was traveling with him because she was his partner for a work project. She said they'd booked a flight together. She said she needed the passport because her cat sitter had taken her passport last minute and she was waiting for the cat sitter to ship it. It was a mess of reasons spoken quickly, with a practiced calm that made other people start to doubt the simple fact that I was holding my own passport. He started to cry. He called me by my old pet name and accused me of stealing. People in the terminal started whispering and calling their friends. A man recorded a different angle and posted it with a caption that made it look like a public breakup drunk on drama. My phone filled with messages from people I'd told nothing to, likes and emojis, and a friend who asked if I was okay, and a cousin who asked why I would do something like that. Jess texted me saying maybe this wasn't worth humiliating myself. Mike called and told me to stop before I made things worse. I found myself standing in an airport terminal watching the people I loved hesitate, making excuses for him, advising me to take the high road as if my passport being used in this alley of lies was a minor bump. The ally voices blurred. He was escorted to an office. The moment the door closed, Anna leaned in and said something low to me that peeled my composure away. She said she had been his college girlfriend but had broken up with him and they'd reconnected recently. She said she didn't know about me. She looked at me with a kind of embarrassed hunger, like we were both bait on the same hook. She said she was sorry. She said I should leave before I made myself worse. I felt something inside me break. I pictured all the ways I'd tolerated small thefts, stolen shirts, forgotten bills. I pictured him borrowing my faith, like a cheap pen. The humiliation was public, but the real pain was private. I had been convincing myself for a year that his small evasions were not betrayals, that missing receipts and late texts were not a pattern. I sat down on the bench and watched him through the window of the security office. Through the glass, he looked smaller. He shouted at the guard for the guard to release him and used the kind of words men use when they want to make themselves look wronged. The guard asked him for identification. He could not produce his passport because my passport was in my hand. Security upgraded the incident to a proper report. He tried to call his mother, then hung up. His face was pale, like he'd been exposed to something cold. In that quiet small room, my strategy changed. I had thought the footage would be proof. I had thought the passport in my hand would be final. Proof is a thing until someone convinces the right people it isn't. People took sides the way they always do, comforting the angry, excusing the charming. I realized I couldn't depend on other people to fix what he'd broken. I had to fix it myself. I pushed through the doors of the security office and asked to speak. They sat us down in front of a camera and a man with a badge. I played my video. I showed the texts. I described every time he'd lied about small things and how I had gaslit myself into believing it was normal. I told them I had given him the passport and that he had given it to the other woman. I didn't cry when I told him the part about the kiss. For the first time, I didn't let a shame I did not deserve color my voice. The badge man looked tired. He asked me if I wanted to press charges. I thought about pressing charges for what? For using my passport as a prop in his private theater? For betrayal? For humiliation? The law was not neatly written for heartbreak. He offered a civil option and said they could file a report and contact Lost and Found. He said he would take statements. He didn't offer me a hero's speech. He offered to help make a paper trail. When the door opened, he'd left without saying goodbye. Anna's boarding pass was in the trash can. He had tried to run, and on the other side of the terminal I saw him being escorted to a quiet corner by 2 security men. People clapped silently like it was some story they'd been waiting to watch. He looked at me through one last pane of glass, and his face was a paper mask of anger and regret, stitched together in a way that made me think of small, slow betrayals, not fireworks, but erosion. I walked out of that airport with my passport in my pocket and a camera full of evidence. For a week, people messaged and picked sides. There were texts from his friends saying he had a tough home situation. There were messages from women I didn't know asking what had happened. My brother sat with me on the couch and didn't make any decisions for me. He sat there and let me cry until I fell asleep on his shoulder like a child. Jess brought me bad takeout and refused to judge. Those two kept me from making stupid posts. They kept me human. A false victory had been the moment security took him aside. The real victory was quieter. I returned to the apartment we had shared and collected the things that were mine. His toothbrush stayed. I left him a note that said, I wasn't making this into a public spectacle. I was simply taking myself back. I changed my locks. I changed passwords. The passport returned to its drawer felt like a different object. It felt like property again, not a bargaining chip. He texted me to say he loved me and that I had overreacted. He left a voicemail between apologies and accusations. I let all of it sit on my phone like old mail. I wrote down everything in a notebook so I would not confuse my new boundaries with rage. I told Mike I was okay, and he asked me to come have dinner with him and a friend in 2 days. I said yes. The last time I saw him, he stood at the end of the street with a suitcase and a face, like he'd been punished by his own conscience. He didn't call my name. I didn't look back. I walked to the bus stop and watched him get smaller behind a pillar. He had his passport now, I later learned. He had convinced someone else to lend a hand. He left town the next day. The opposite of the person who sat on my couch handing me little apologies was a woman who refused to forgive herself for trusting too easily. That woman died in a quiet collapse. The new woman learned to take a passport out of the drawer and check the name and the date without feeling absurd. The new woman kept the recording locked and a copy in a drive. The new woman laughed with Jess again and did not make excuses when friends called her brave. In the end, I didn't make a viral spectacle. I didn't need to. The consequences were real. He lost trust. He lost the comfortable orbit he'd had. I lost the illusion that love was enough. I kept my passport. I got my boundaries back. I slept without the feeling that any small thing could be used to take me apart. That calm, that quiet fixedness was the real opposite of my opening image. I had wanted him to be my safe place. I found out I could be my own.